If you go earlier, in early Zoroastrian tradition, or even pre-Zoroastrian tradition of Iran, there is such a thing as pre-Zoroastrian tradition, you see that the awareness of the concept of the coming of the spring and celebrating that is still in Persian culture. Now, if you compare that with an older culture and a very much, of course, sophisticated and remarkable culture of Babylonian times,
Yeah, yeah.
which the art of whereby the science of astronomy or astrology
Hmm.
was very much advanced. If you look at many of the documents of the Babylonian time, you see it would be remarkable the way that the time was computed in the Babylonian culture prior to the Achaemenid,
Yeah.
prior to the 6th century BC.
Hmm. Hmm.
But uh, so far as I know, uh, in the Babylonian times, although the concept of the beginning of the spring does occur in the documents or in the material culture of the time, but it does not occupy a very important part of that tradition. Whereas if you compare it to the
Oh.
Iranian, that is Achaemenid Iranian, you see that the concept of the Nowruz becomes very distinct. Why this is so, which I presume is is a question that comes to
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Because the Achaemenids, if you know better than I do, probably, Achaemenids learned a great deal from the Babylonian culture that they conquered.
Hmm.
Okay, and of course, what exists prior to the Babylonians, as all the ancient origins of the Babylonians. We have here at Yale, there is a Babylonian collection, it's a very substantial one,
Yeah.
more than 20,000 pieces. And if you go and look at some of the you know earthenware, some of the inscriptions, some of the clay tablets of the period, you
Hmm.
see that much of what Iranians claim as their own. By the way, there is some bunch of it are the Achaemenid period of the Babylon that it exists in this collection. You see that there is so much of it is there in the Achaemenid times. But the Nowruz is something which seems to be uh, inherited by the Achaemenids from the pre-Achaemenid times, probably from pre-Zoroastrian times. As you
Oh,
know,
wow.
early Zoroastrianism corresponds to, or what we know as early Zoroastrianism. There is much debate about the life of Zoroaster and all that. We don't get into it. But something called early Zoroastrianism is associated with early Achaemenid period, in which, by the way, in the sacred texts of the Zoroastrian times, early Zoroastrian times, there is no reference to Nowruz.
Huh.
Okay,
Okay.
no, in the Avesta, the old Avesta, which is the Gathas, which are the sayings of the prophet, that is the sayings of Zoroaster himself, or in the young Avesta, which are the other sacred texts of the Zoroastrianism, later compared to the Gathas, there is no reference to it. But the practice is what is significant. And here is the myth to which I was referring to. And to me is quite fascinating, actually. You see, there is this virtually from ancient Egypt to Babylonia to several other cultures of ancient times, including Greek. You would have this common trend, including in Gilgamesh, which is even older than all of them.
Yes, yes,
Have
yeah.
this, you have this idea that sun, which is the center of kind of veneration for the Persian culture, ancient Persian culture, it's a kind of Mithraistic concept. Although I hesitate to use the word Mithraism because then it creates all kinds of other problems. But there is this veneration of sun in
Yeah.
the ancient Zoroastrian tradition. Okay, even probably pre-Achaemenid tradition, in which the sun at the height of it in the sky is venerated because it's a source of energy, it's a source of life on earth, and recognized as such.
Hmm.
And during the seasonal shift from the spring to the summer to the fall to the winter, uh, there are prayers that is associated with the place of sun on the sky, okay, daily. So
We're not talking about
I-
Islamic prayers. This is
no, no,
pre-Islam. This
no.
is
That's actually
Zoroastrianism.
remarkable. There are
Wow.
five of them. There are five times during the day
That
that you
sounds
have.
like Islam.
It's exactly that has been adopted. That has
But
been
you're not
adopted.
talking about Islam. You're talking about
No, no, no.
pre-Islamic
I'm
Judaism.
talking about no, no. I'm talking
Yeah.
about pre 6th century BC.
Yeah. That's
And what
fascinating.
yes. And what happens is that one of these five prayers is during the noon time, which is equivalent to what you would call in Persian namaz zuhr or
Hmm.
salat zuhr. Okay,
Okay.
okay. Uh, in Zoroastrianism, apparently is a very brief one. I don't know what it is, but what it is, this veneration at the noon time is important because it's only performed during the summertime, the spring to summer to fall. That's the 6 months of the time, year. The second 6 year of the year, it was believed that sun goes underground. Okay. And so because it goes underground, it's underworld. And then it re-emerges in the spring of next year. And it was assumed that during this time when it goes to the dark world, the, the function of the sun is to keep the roots of the trees warm, to keep the streams warm, and so that the life continues while the sun is underground and it comes back underworld and it comes back next year in the spring and should be celebrated in the spring. So the noon prayers was never performed in the winter or in the after Mehregan, that is after
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the celebration of the Feast of Mehregan. That's the uh, beginning of the fall. It stops and it starts again in the spring. So that is the oldest apparently reference that we have to the concept of Nowruz, to the concept of Nowruz, not to the term.
Wow. Wow.
So
Uh,
this is very remarkable because first of all, Zoroastrianism, or at least early Zoroastrianism, is a kind of a very animistic religion. It's a religion, it's a set of beliefs that believe that believes that all the natural phenomenon in the world, not only humans, but animals, plants, and even rivers, sea, sky, clouds, stars, everything has a spirit. It's alive, okay? And because of that, because of this aliveness of the of everything, therefore it makes sense that you would see a sense of a renewal that I referred to it earlier on, that the spring is a kind of a symbol for the renewal of the nature. Because
Doctor, I'm gonna. Is it fair for me to use this word instead? You keep on using the word renewal, and I'm not saying
yes,
that's incorrect. How about rebirth? The way you're explaining it, it
yes,
almost
it
sounds
is
like
rebirth, maybe. All of this corresponds to a term in ancient Zoroastrianism
uh-huh.
called farashkart. I don't know whether you've ever heard of this
No,
term.
I have not.
Farash of the same, as you might guess, of the same etymological origin as fresh,
Mm-hmm.
means new, or in Persian taze, or no. Okay?
Okay.
Kard in Persian, kardan, to
Uh-huh.
do, to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah.
So to make new. To make new is the farashkar. And that is the concept that is associated with this cyclical movement of sun in the sky, underground, and back in the sky again. So this is the idea, the oldest kind of mythological, if you like, the concept of what Nowruz is all about. You are celebrating this process. Why you are celebrating it is important, because it was assumed that the function of the humans is to try to venerate and to praise this cyclical movement in order for it to continue. So there is a human function for the continuity of this process. That is why the prayers. And that is, in effect, corresponds to the fertility cult, which was also very prominent, very common in ancient world. You would praise the nature in order to allow it to grow and to allow the growth to continue in the world. And of course, the beginning of the spring is the beginning of the growth season, all right? When
Yeah.
the land
Yeah.
is killed and so forth. So what it means is that this concept of fertility of the land, because this is an agrarian culture,
Yeah.
is closely associated with the concept of the Nowruz. So we venerate Nowruz, we venerate the nature because we want it to continue, and because we want it to give us back the fruits of the earth.
Yeah. So in that sense, it's really renewal is not rebirth. The term I use is not exactly.
Well, maybe rebirth. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that. I mean, if you have you ever looked at the deity, the fertility deities?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That
Deities.
many
Yeah.
of the ancient cultures,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
look at fertility deities, for instance, in the orator culture of what is today's Turkey, if you look at it, you should usually as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
very well endowed, with huge breasts,
Uh-huh.
because it feeds the children of nature,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the nature continues. Sometimes it has many breasts. If you look at many of the fertility statues, you see that the woman has several breasts because of being able to fully and sufficiently um, nurture the earth,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
nourish the earth.
Nourish
Okay.
the earth.
And also, I would make one more parenthesis before we move on, and that is the concept you see in the Nowruz. There is a half seen thing, okay?
The
That is,
table with all
yeah,
the
well,
items
yeah,
of significance. Yeah.
yeah, and much of it is very recent, so it's not very significant. What is significant is
Mhm.
sabz,
Sabs. I mean,
sabze,
okay. The
the
green.
the green that you grow
Yeah.
in a plate or something. Okay, why sabze is important? Sabze is part of that uh, veneration of the spring and celebration of encouraging the earth to produce, to give us food. So you basically make a, uh symbolic growth of the grain, whatever the grain is, and by this way you encourage the nature to continue the process of production. All right,
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why on the 13th of the Nowruz, what happens? You take the plate of your sabze, your growth,
Hmm.
throw it into the throw it into the water.
Yeah.
Or
Usually into a
put
stream or
it in the
something. Yeah.
stream. Yeah. Why this is so? Because you are basically reminding the nature that that is the cycle that has to be reproduced. You help the nature, you remind the nature that this is what it has to do and produce food for you for the remaining of the year.
Wow, Dr. Amanat, I have been celebrating the Persian New Year through my extended family for several decades, and suddenly you've given it a whole different meaning. This year, I'm going to be super quiet thinking about everything you said.